Those who can, build. Those who can't, criticize. We're all sort of familiar with that sentiment. It's actually a popular idea which we pick up from our favorite actors, writers, musicians, creators. It has the same sort of nice, simple ring to it as rooting for the belabored artist fighting studios, executives, or the man to protect their vision. We all like rooting for the artist, and yet, in an age where we're also bombarded with any voice, all voices, with celebrities going on talk shows to talk about their life, which we listen to closely because if we're audience to them, we get to keep the fantasy that we'll one day sit on a weird little chair next to Jimmy Fallon and tell him and an attentive audience about our cat or a funny story that happened to us at work. Critic, audience, and artist are all melded into one organism. We all consume tons of art and are all increasingly literate in how to read it, and all have an opinion on everything we consume. We want simultaneously to consume what respected critics have to say, to become one, and to destroy them. I'm going to say some somewhat unkind things about the introductions of a few Fallout games. I think a few of them are good, a few of them are bad, and one is spectacular, but in writing an introduction to this criticism of a series of introductions to earnest artistic endeavors, it felt insincere not to bear myself honestly and candidly. Behind me is a count of how many people have seen my videos in the last 2 days. To the right is how many have seen them in the last hour. And this essay I'm making is the art. Engaging with art begets more art. But in engaging with these things, I have no other choice but to reveal a lot about me, what I value, how I eat art, and in writing this thing, how I make art myself. So, without further ado, oh shit, what am I forgetting? Oh yeah, war. War never changes.
Your bones are scraped clean by the desolate wind. Your vault will now surely die, as you have.
Okay, so let's start with Fallout 1. This is the intro that really sets the font that all the other Fallout intros for a good while use to write in. I love this joke where we see our dedicated boys keep the peace in a newly annexed Canada, and shows two dudes in power armor blow the brains out of some guy on their knees and then turn and wave to the camera. And then, buy war bonds. It's a good joke, and pulling further out to show an upright, functional TV in a destroyed apartment in a ruined city. I love the car advertised for $199,999.99. And then we get a little slideshow with the now iconic, war never changes. And yeah, this is the last time that isn't annoying. This slideshow is good. It has ideas it wants to set up, and it spends a bit of time pontificating in a way that isn't abrasive or annoying. It describes how historically we got here, but it's also not just describing history. It compares the Spanish Inquisition to the modern-day plundering of petroleum and uranium. You're the first of a generation who has been born and lived in vaults, and the call to adventure is your vault's overseer telling you that they're going to run out of water in 150 days. It's gripping, it's simple, and it immediately lets you know how to proceed. Again, almost everyone is going to go to the vault where they're told to, but the freedom is totally the players'. I like this intro a lot. It sets up the Fallout series and is such a bullseye on the first try that every subsequent intro emulates it. It respects your time, has a lot to say, and is really sharp. I could do something similar for Fallout 2, but for time, let's skip to after the developers went bankrupt and were bought by Bethesda. This is the highly anticipated sequel to Fallout 2, a decade later in 3D with a new design approach and a new way of doing things. I know that sounds like a compliment now, but wow, it isn't for very long. The first two introductions are not high art, but they're smart and efficient and serve the new IP wonderfully. I want to ask how it could even be possible to ruin this series. It's already done the groundwork, and really just coasting off the tone and introducing some new ideas and some good writing to the series, which already has so much going for it in the new VAT system, and transitioning to 3D, that it really shouldn't be too hard to keep the spirit of Fallout alive here. Best case, do some good writing. Worst case, Study the DNA of the original games and create an intro in the same spirit of the first two that introduce you to how unforgiving the wasteland is, and which teaches you how to play in a way that still lets you feel like an adventurer with a strong sense of being able to create your own challenging but rewarding adventure. So Fallout 3's intro, you play as a baby. Pick your stats and crawl up to the baby gate. And when that's done, we go to a birthday party. We sort of fuck around, going where we're told, and sometimes the game wants to wink at us and pretend it's teaching us mechanics, and it technically it is. I really dislike this direction. Okay, let me give this thing its due with the opening cinematic and all. So we begin tight on some light bulb, which flickers on attached to some radiation detection rig. A crackly voice of someone singing "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" enters. We pull further out, slowly to a dashboard hula dancer. And this imagery I like. Further out, we pull out to a bus, which is cluttered and dirty. Some loose things fill the seats, and we pull further to propaganda, military enlistments, and recruitment for underground vaults. The windows of the bus are shattered, and as we pull further out, the bus is blown in half, revealing a ruined city where only rubble remains. It's fine. It's okay. It's fine. I wish it said more because we spend 2 minutes just to get, set dressing. And I wish this intro spent more time setting up what the game is about and what it wanted to present itself as, which I think is going to be important to distinguish, is different from just setting up where and when this game takes place. I'll take some motivic development and beginnings of what a better unnamed Fallout game coming up soon is about from its intro. And here we spend 2 minutes just seeing some set dressing. At the end, a Brotherhood of Steel member turns towards the camera and holy shit, a character. The only thing we can take away from this is that it's a Fallout game. Get it? Because radiation. Now this one might go over some of your heads, but I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire is an interesting song here because the world ended in nuclear fallout, and I don't know, it's fine. It's not strictly bad, it's such a long opening to tell us that we're playing a Fallout game. Maybe some of the point is that it's in 3D, which, okay. It'll get better though, I'm sure. So, if this bus cinematic was a bit static and dull, we go through its slideshow of a narrator explaining to us that the world ended by nuclear fallout and mankind retreated underground to bunkers and that war never changes. And sorry, didn't we just get all that? Sort of. The whole point of that really long, boring introduction was to show us non-verbally that the world has ended from nuclear fallout. I guess there's some explicit slam poetry about war never changing since the dawn of mankind, but wouldn't that have been nice to be shown, or even better for it to be developed or brought up in the actual game? I've already ruined that once you get the sticks here and start controlling the character that it stays static and uninteresting, but it is bad form to spend 10 more minutes ripping into something that I think is fine, but genuinely not that great or in the spirit of better Fallout games, so I won't. You start being born in Vault 101. A lady who we assume is our mother dies upon giving birth to us, and we hear some adults talking about things we don't understand. This is ludic, I guess, because we're a baby and because we're also not totally clued into what's happening. So we crawl around as a baby and are trapped in a little baby gate. And yeah, I get it. We're also trapped in this vault and want to leave to the larger world of Fallout 3 that has engaging quests and interesting moral questions and a generally good tone and sense of humor that Fallout's known for. That is what's outside this vault, right? I'm not going to go beat by beat because this sucks and it's another hour long. You talk to a bully who wants your sweet roll, you shoot some roaches, and you take a test to determine your tag skills. Fine. I know this is supposed to make you feel like these situations will be blown up later and more difficult and complex. And in one way they are. You do have bigger things to shoot later. The moral questions don't get more difficult and nuanced, but you do get to shoot bigger things. Fallout 3 specifically has a really boring hour of introduction to an otherwise more dynamic open world for the remainder, but any game that gets those priorities so backwards can't change what it's fundamentally made of later. And there are, some ideas on display in this poor introduction, so here's the part where I have to acknowledge that maybe this is on purpose and try not to sound like a hypocrite. So I've, number one, acknowledged that in this game they take away your sense of freedom in a genre and in a game about being free. And number two, I've said in the past that games don't have to be fun to be good art. So Fallout 3, which in its first hour really clearly has points it wants to make about how you're trapped in this vault and not free, is smart, right? It's intentionally pulling the leash tight to make it feel great when you get out. Furthermore, by my own admission, it's okay and even good to make the player feel bad. That's also art. Here's why I don't really buy this though. Fallout 3 isn't sufficiently about freedom. Benefit of the doubt is fine, but if the intro is lame in service to a game that's also not very good at making you feel free, it's not a smart idea, it's a lame-ass intro. I'm gonna bite my tongue on elaborating that point as I move on to an intro that I like a lot. Fallout New Vegas. It's dynamic and sharp and really easy to talk about without spoiling anyone. It's exactly symptomatic of the game's main priorities and ideas and stylistic flourishes. It shares precisely the same skeletal structure as Fallout 3's opening actually, but the small changes it makes is what we're being shown, and how we're led to experience the game doesn't just make a stronger first hour in New Vegas, it makes a stronger game for the entire runtime. It's sort of stunning how much it feels like a better and more intelligent version of Fallout 3's opening. Do you know what makes these ideas and surface level elements feel like a knockoff versus paying homage to the first one and second one? Doing it well. If Fallout 3 came out after New Vegas, I have no doubt I'd be saying it cheated off of New Vegas' homework really badly, but I can tell that in New Vegas, this is just a stylistic similarity in the same vein as its sister title. And of course, borrowing the same elements and quotes as all the other games in the series because holy shit, it's done way better than any of the others. And it's in this 1-minute opening cinematic. Here's another question so that I don't contradict myself. I've said in the past, and I maintain here, that normally video games emulating the language of films as a crutch in openings and in big moments is generally unappealing because the medium is ludic. Let us play things and let the medium develop its own means of conveying the same information. But do you know when you do get to show a short movie in your game? When it's fucking good and stands alone as a good piece of film by itself. If video games want to borrow from the much older, more mature medium, it better be well constructed as film. Because bottom line, this little intro is incredible. The main trick it pulls off over and over is manipulative and conveyant framing. Fallout 3 gets this kind of right, but doesn't do it as insanely as New Vegas. If we're going to start really tight on something and zoom out slowly, we'd better learn things along the way. One continuous long shot like that has to tell a story of its own, which, crucially, is way different from just conveying a scene. Zooming out to show more stuff is boring. Zooming out to show something surprising over and over is the goal. I'm going to go through this slowly, but I think our brains are fast and good at reading film language and picking up in a quarter second that which I'm trying to articulate. We start really tight on the moon, with Frank Sinatra's Blue Moon playing, the lyrics of which will trickle through the opening. Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. We move further out, till the soft glow of the moon meeting that of a tall tower, illuminated at night. Further, we see text beneath the tower. Viva Las Vegas 2025. We're in a painting we didn't realize earlier, but that makes sense actually. This is a Fallout game, and the world, Las Vegas, doesn't look like that anymore. There are some insane audio tricks here, and there's a whooshing sound and a soft ringing as we realize that we're seeing a painting. The soft sound of this song, which crackled like a record player when we were close to the painting, gets quieter and suddenly has the timbre of a song being played in a large, empty room. It's switching diegesis before we even know what the diegesis is. It's as if we zoom out in retrospect, the sound was coming from the direction of that painting. Brilliantly, as we realize we were in a painting, the camera rotates to orient the room we find ourselves in right side up, and the painting crooked and alone. We're in a messy, littered casino, empty of life. As we expect though, the world is over and mankind doesn't have time to gamble 250 years after this picture was hung up. The idle slot machines are honestly somewhat moving. It's a very weird and strange place, this casino after the end of the world. We get more of the same tricks, the sound whooshing and ringing as we move over the balcony, and as we pull out of the building to surprise bitch, Las Vegas is not idle. We see a large illuminated silhouette of a topless woman on a building with a huge sign with fire lighting up its name, Gomorrah. And admittedly, naming your casino after the biblical city of sin which was annihilated by God is ballsy. Once again, mirroring the trick we saw earlier in reverse, the music shifts diegesis again and suddenly it's close and intimate and the lit up Las Vegas Strip ignites it as we first heard it in that picture from 2025. It's great storytelling because it suggests an idea thematically that's repeated and pervasive in this opening. It has some effect on us, changing its timbre with the change in scenery, but it also suggests that not only is Las Vegas identical to how it stood before all the nuclear conflict, we haven't changed either. The end of the world hasn't dampened our need to kill, fuck, and gamble. Remember, we get all of this in addition to setting and tone setup. And all non-verbally. The soldiers of the new California Republic walk by waving their flags, and we're introduced to not just one of the most important factions in the Mojave, but to how they're flawed and not working out. It's a group of volunteer soldiers, mostly fighting because there was no other good option, in a war that they aren't winning and are stretched way too thin everywhere for. They're democratic and work under elected officials, and they've successfully held the Vegas Strip, but the soldiers are all gambling away their money in the Strip. It's wonderful. We move further out, and there's really nothing to feel except shock at these huge illuminated casinos. The Tops, the Lucky 38, Vault 21, and Gomorrah. We see the real powerhouse of the Strip, the Securitrons roll by, and yeah, Robot Casino. And to that point, there's two fucking robot cowboys in the game. There's a really smart cut to further out when we first see the moon hanging over the tower we know is the Lucky 38. The Lucky 38 is a bit banged up, but the presence of the moon, the fact that every single shot makes so sure that you remember it's there, silently, present, in, and through nuclear holocaust. It was there before there was a Las Vegas, and will be there after Vegas. From below the frame, an NCR Ranger sits up and looks down the scope of his rifle as we pull out further, and again, the gun erupts in an ignition, tracking the bullet. And, more importantly than the bullet, to the sign framing the Strip. New Vegas. The Las is covered with tacky lettering, and we get more nonverbal storytelling that this is the same den of vice and lechery, just with a bit more radiation. Before we even have time to process that, the bullet shreds someone's head and blood stains the screen, pulling further out to a new view of the city, and this trick is getting old, which is insane because it keeps working. We get new information and new framing. The almost lone source of light at night, lighting up a desert, visible from 10 miles away, tells another really clear story. And Vegas is likened to which only other source of light at night? The blue moon, present still in the sky, who saw me there, standing alone. Cutting off this view, the Legion passes through in the middle of some operation. Pulling out further, this time miles away to the first plot beat. Yeah, I'm not fucking around. This opening is incredible, and I've spent way too long talking about a minute of panning out. Some cons and a man in a black and white checkered suit, lighting a cigarette or burying someone. You. We get the most static part of this intro, which just pulls through a few slides and gives us some exposition. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it gives you really engaging and pertinent information. It introduces us to the main factions we saw in the intro, and it generally feels like a read a dungeon master would do at the beginning of a campaign. This is a role-playing game, and the exposition is short and engaging enough not to overstay its welcome. You are a courier, hired by the Mojave Express to deliver a package to the New Vegas Strip. What seemed like a simple delivery job has taken a turn for the worst. This intro is still ramping into its best part. We're in a POV looking down at our own hands tied. We see two gray Khans between the man in the checkered suit. Liam O'Brien is the voice of one of the Khans, and I'm sure this is the last time we'll hear his voice in the game.
Welcome to the... How are you today? I wasn't working right now. Enjoying the show? In Freeside, you better get outside for a little bit.
This guy talks with like 50s lingo, which is weird as hell. It's not unbefitting of the setting. Remember, we've already been hit over the head with a reminder that this is post-nuclear, but it's also a weird revival of a lot of pre-war culture. Also, this voice is Matthew Perry, which is cute. This is just really good. There's nothing else to say. It's good intrigue. It's exactly enough of the picture to start you off and leave you with questions that will put you on this guy's trail and on the trail of a chip he stole from you. It's crescendo to the title card, and immediately we get this introduction. For good reason, there's not too much to say about this character building section. You pick your stats, talk to Doc Mitchell, and do a Rorschach test, which is way funnier than an exam in a school, and I like that at the end of this he just lets you pick whatever specialized stat you want anyways. You allocate points to whatever you prioritize and then get to pick traits, which are a really welcome re-addition, and then you're out of here. The rest of this really is a tutorial, and almost all players will stay in Goodsprings and learn about the town and do the raid where you defend the town, and learn about the major means of interaction with the game. But both introduction sequences are about an hour long, but New Vegas' introduction technically ends after 5 minutes or so. So what's the difference? If everyone stays in Goodsprings and does the tutorial anyways, then why even compare them? There is a very pervasive difference between them related to the fact that these games are role-playing games. A game willing to let you skip all its cool stuff has a completely different feel to one that makes you do what it's already expecting you to. The important contract isn't seeing cool things or shooting this guy's fucking head off. The looted contract is that you're pretending to be someone who lives and makes decisions. If you're stuck at a fucking birthday party with dick to do and dick to say, it immediately slices the idea that you're free in this world to shreds. Again, I know this is probably the desired response from Fallout 3. You're supposed to feel trapped in a game that keeps telling you you're trapped, in service of feeling free in an hour. It's not a bad thing to make the player feel bad and unfulfilled on purpose, especially because the game thinks it's about making decisions and being free. It isn't though, and it misses a lot of the shots it takes, and I recommend watching H-Bomb's video essay on Fallout 3. I do honestly think he's top 3 video essayists of all time, and his work is very moving to me. I think Fallout 3's introduction fucking sucks, and sucks in the same way a lot of game introductions suck. But it almost has nothing on Fallout 4, which, while technically shorter, manages to feel way longer, and honestly, it just sucks so much. I think it would be deeply insulting actually for me to go through a long play-by-play of this intro because it certainly feels insulting just to consume it. So here it is. You play as an electronic meat puppet who is simultaneously not written and not an avatar you're allowed to inject opinions or ideas into. You just play as a husk of a silhouette of a human. The setting is very 50s, and unlike New Vegas, which really makes you feel everything it has to say, Fallout 4 just sort of gestures towards ideas it hopes you've seen better before. It gestures towards 50s culture, it gestures towards Fallout lore, and it gestures towards better games. A salesman comes to your door and says, hey, y'all really should register for admission to our underground vaults because, oh yeah, Fallout. You can press some buttons that don't fucking mean anything and wish that this game was teaching you about dialogue in a more meaningful way, but it's not like the rest of this dialogue in this game deserved a more nuanced tutorial. We pick our points, look at our ugly baby, bad writing, and oh my god, the bombs have dropped. In-game minutes later, the same day as the salesman came up to your door, by the way. It's fucking whiplash. We run out to the vaults with our baby, get into the vault, go into the cryopods, and years later some dudes take our baby and kill our spouse, and then years later we escape and leave the vault, killing some roaches on the way. On one hand, I think a passive observer would think maybe this intro isn't so bad. After all, it looks nice, I guess, and wow, a bomb, and oh no, your spouse is dead, and not sweet, very not cool, and a cute little robot. That's hilarious. Fuck this intro, fuck every intro like it. And while I'm here, fuck most AAA introductions from Western developers. It's just so repetitive, it's fucking insane. There is absolutely a new mold for making Horizon, Red Dead, God of War 2010 type games in an environment where critics play the game a few days before it's released for maybe 25% of its runtime, and you want to start your game with probably a different chemical makeup than the rest of your games. Of course they would try to emulate movies. This is the starting line of a game, and in an open world game, it might be the only time that you get to definitely establish themes, mood, tone, whatever. So it makes sense that developers would want to hold you in the only guaranteed time they get with you, and if there are ideas being conveyed and some risks being taken, how bad could it be? It is seemingly a bit nitpicky. Worst case, it's an hour of a game that sucks, and if the introduction is a separate mode of storytelling than the rest of the game, well, that's okay. They're allowed to be different and detached from each other. The story, however, in and out of the introductions is told by the same storytellers. If the story is flat and unengaging in the introduction and has nothing to say for itself thematically, then what are the odds it finds its feet along the way? And truly, I don't really have a huge problem with this kind of mimetic makeup of an introduction. I just hate when it's done badly. And the funny thing, I think, is that I suspect really strongly that this type of introduction was really cemented by a game that did it way better. The Last of Us came out at a really perfect time to be well regarded as a classic and a master of storytelling because its reception on a really young Let's Play YouTube.
How's it going, Rez? My name's PewDiePie.
This point is made for me better than I could make it here.
No!
Move your hands, B.
No!
Listen to me, I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby.
I don't have time to talk about this intro, but it's quite good, and I don't need to note the similarities between it and this game where you meet your family, fuck around with them for a while, flee with them during the end of the world, and then watch your loved one die. The difference is, writing. Thank you for coming to the TED Talk. So, I know this video feels like much ado about nothing, but I really am sensitive and more receptive to any game that's willing to try to start to engage with its audience. It's a few minutes or an hour of a game that generally breaks ludicrously from what it's trying to do in the intro, and really that's fine, but any really strong artistic endeavor would be earnestly and excited to engage its audience immediately. You can just feel it when a group has a story they want to tell. Even if all the marks don't land perfectly, there's a really crystallized artistic intent that feels good to play. So with that said, to round out our analysis, let's see what Fallout 76 is up to, and maybe give that one a few words.
War. War never changes.
Okay, fuck off.